Are you ready for a Christmas Carol? Spoilers for the finale of Pluribus Season 1. It's been 71 days since the joining. Kusimayu from Peru, who stated earlier in the season that she was excited to join the hive mind, enjoys the final moments of her humanity and says goodbye to her baby goat. The baby goat running after her was really heartbreaking, but also symbolic because it was a visual cue showing the tether of her individuality and humanity being broken. And it's very clear that the villagers kept the livestock penned up until the day she joined them to provide her some kind of comfort and nostalgia. The smile she has and how quiet it gets after she has finally joined everybody by inhaling a vat of fumes shows us exactly how quickly her culture, the traditions, and possibly some religious aspects just ceased to exist as soon as she joined. We then go back to day 60 when Carol and Manusos finally meet for the first time in person. But because Manusos is very paranoid and knows little about what's going on, the two decide to take their conversation to Carol's backyard and speak in the desert under an umbrella. He asks her why she seems to favor them so much after the video she sent him. He's afraid to go inside because he thinks that there are bugs all over her house and that the collective mind is spying on her, but they go into Carol's house and Manusos does a search for any bugs, only to find a liquor cabinet monitor from 2011 that Helen left in the cabinet to make sure Carol was behaving after they decided to freeze her eggs. And this discovery of Carol's foreshadowed the collective's eventual plan that we find out later in the episode. Carol and Manusos get into a disagreement. She leaves him the house next door, which he is clearly uncomfortable with. Then he makes a phone call to the collective because he's curious to know who is her chaperone, who is her person. Carol wakes up in the middle of the night from an inebriated slumber, only to find Zosha's car outside of the house that Manusos is staying at. And this is where Carol and Manusos hit their breaking point. Carol books it over to Manusos' house to see that he has been talking with Zosha, and she is not happy about that. After she learns that Manusos made Zosha tell him everything that Carol's gone through all season and all the information that Carol has learned, Manusos wants to get right to it. There's no time to waste. So he makes a call to the collective to send him another person. Back at Carol's house, she is frustrated with Zosha. She is clearly blurring the lines between what a girlfriend is and what the chaperone assigned to her is. Zosha herself is a catfish that is used to manipulate, distract, and persuade Carol into giving up saving the world. And even though Carol knows this deep down, she still is just taking it so personal, and she gets jealous that Zosha loves Manusos as much as they love Carol. And that is a truth that Carol does not handle very well at all. She starts to spiral, and she realizes that she cannot disconnect Zosha as an individual as bad as she wants to from the collective. Even with that glimmer of hope at the end of the last episode that made her feel like Zosha was really there for just a moment. Zosha warns Carol that something is about to happen. Carol comes over freaking out because she's worried about Zosha. She gets really angry at Manusos, doing what she had been doing the whole first part of the season and thinking about how many lives it costs for him to run his experiments. But using the radio and his anger, Manusos attempts to pull the individual back out of Rick before the hive mind has a chance to restabilize the frequency pattern. Carol storms into the house, using her Second Amendment right to stop him from his experiment because it's hurting Zosha. But even with all that, Manusos' experiment fails. So we learn that it is not that simple to pull someone out of the collective as jamming the signal for a few minutes and trying to speak to their inner individual self. Carol goes back to her house to check on Zosha. Carol then gets a call from Lakshmi in India, who thinks that Carol upset everybody and is calling her angry because she doesn't know that Manusos is there with Carol and that he was the one that actually caused the disruption this time. Zosha tells Carol, "You know what we have to do," and then with the rest of the collective proceeds to leave New Mexico to get space from Manusos. And I think Carol knew that that was going to happen, and she didn't care because she knew that that was the only way to protect Zosha. But before she goes, Manusos tells her that the risk of losing some people was worth the reward of finding out some valuable information. The first test did not work, so they're going to have to try something else. And he gives her an ultimatum in this moment. Are you going to choose saving the world or the girl? And Carol drives away believing that she can have her cake and eat it too. But she will soon find out that the grass is not always greener on the other side. So over the next 11 days leading up to day 71, Carol runs away to travel the world with Zosha. Now, something interesting I observed about the book that Carol is reading, it's called The Left Hand of Darkness. And I find this deeply ironic to the situation that she put herself in, because that book is about a world without fixed gender or power hierarchies, which is funny because Zosha represents all of humanity unified in a single controlled power, or rather a controlled system. And the themes of the book itself argue that true connection requires patience, consent, and mutual vulnerability. So Carol thinks that she's choosing love over power by choosing Zosha, but that book, The Left Hand of Darkness, warns the reader that a world with unity that has no individuality is not a world of harmony, but rather a world built on destruction. And we know this because Carol told this to Zosha in the last episode. You are living an unsustainable life. You can't even pick an apple. They're trying to be so efficient, no one's going to be left in the end. Now, after traveling the world with Zosha for 11 days, Carol is as happy as she has ever been in her whole life. And that's when it hits her. This is too good to be true. There is no way I could be any happier. And that's when Zosha reminds her, yes, there is. This is where Carol's perfect situationship with Zosha and the rest of humanity comes to a halt, because Zosha finally reveals to Carol the collective hive mind plans to use Carol's frozen embryos to grow into stem cells and unify her with the rest of humanity. No consent needed. Again, another very ironic point to the book she was just reading. I was so frustrated with this part because Carol had so much time to ask them to give her back her embryos or to not have their permission to use her embryos. And yet, that was the one thing that she missed in all her analyzing. And now Carol realizes how much time she has wasted and that time is only continuing to run out. And Zosha tells Carol to comfort her. We do this because we love you so much. But now in this final part of the spiral, Carol realizes they were never going to love her. They were always going to love their objective. Unify everyone, be super efficient, and broadcast the signal to other planets. 3 days go by, and we see the Manusos stayed in Carol's neighborhood, and for the last 2 weeks, he has been studying electromagnetic waves, data analysis, basic electricity, circuits, and the fundamentals of crystallography, which I guess have something to do with the chrysalis of it all. For the last 2 weeks, he's been working by himself to figure out how to save the world now that he has all this information from Zosha. He reads a passage in one of the books about standing waves, which basically explains how signals are sent through antennas and how some points have antinodes, or rather loops. And that seems to be a big clue as to what experiment he may try in season 2. Because if the radio broadcast frequency from Kepler 22b is on a perpetual loop, then all he has to do is find a way to break the loop. He literally has to find a loophole and might use that to be able to set at least a couple of people free and experiment with what happens once people become unglued from the hive mind. Because that is something very important that they will have to experiment with in season 2. Because if the joining can cost the lives of people, then an unjoining could also cause the same thing to happen. And I swear for a second, we saw the word pluribus flash by in that dictionary. But Manusos realizes that he is on to something for sure. And we see a fire rescue helicopter dropping off a large square shipping container. And to me, that was very symbolic of the fact that Carol is arriving to put out a fire that she allowed to continue. Carol and Zosha have one final silent goodbye, and Zosha is still wishing that Carol wouldn't do what she's about to do. But Carol has finally woken up and snapped out of it, and she tells Manusos, "You win, let's save the world." And I think in this moment she was just kind of standing there processing all the wasted time and how little time she has left before she is glued to the rest of humanity against her will. As the episode ends and she enters her house, Manusos asks her, "What's inside this shipping container?" And she tells him it's an atom bomb, which is a callback to the end of episode 3 after Zosha went to the hospital for giving Carol the grenade, and Carol was having the conversation with the gentleman wearing the DHL shirt, and she was like, "Would you give me a nuclear bomb if I asked you?" And he said, ultimately, yeah. And he asks her if she would like them to get her one, and she says, "I'll have to get back to you on that." And she did by the end of the season, and I think that that was her visual check mark to just say, you know, I really got every drop of what this situation was worth. I really took it to every level of insanity and extorted everything that these people would do for me, and I just wanted to do the most ridiculous request I could do and just make this the final thing I asked them for. Kind of a perfect way to end the season for sure. I'm glad that Carol has finally snapped out of it. I was really sad about the goat running after Kusimayu and her just leaving all of her culture, her religion, her humanity, her individuality behind. Like the fact that the goat could kind of feel Carol that she wasn't there anymore just broke my heart. But in season 2, Carol and Manusos might be the only 2 individuals left on Earth. And if they go, there goes the rest of humanity. Since the clock is ticking, I don't think there will be a time jump in season 2 more than a couple of days. And since Zosha said with luck and patience, we can create those stem cells, that means that there is not 100% chance that they can 100% take over Carol and have her join them. There is still a possibility that something could go wrong. Now that we know that jamming the signal is not going to do much, we also know that undoing it could cause a massive loss of life, just like the actual joining did. And we know that more and more immune individuals will start to disappear into season 2 until it's just Carol and Manusos left. And I think the end game for the series is that Carol will be taken by the collective and unwillingly be joined with the successful stem cells, just as Manusos is finding a way to cure humanity. So either Carol will be his final experiment and test to undo everything, and he will become the last man on Earth, and he will set her free, and then together they can set everyone else free. Like, I really feel like it's going to be neck and neck. They're going to be on the final person that they have to join to complete their mission. Only person that will be left is Manusos. Carol will be the second to last taken over, and just in the nick of time, he will find a way to break the radio signal and set at least Carol free so that maybe she can help him set other people free. But it is to be determined, and there is even then still so much to talk about with this show. But if you enjoyed the first season of Pluribus and you're excited for that December 2027 anticipated release date of season 2, we'll talk about that later. I'm definitely excited to rewatch this and see all the things I missed throughout the season, but this was absolutely a phenomenal show and it blew me away. And there is so much to think about now that it's over for a while, because I'm still processing that this entire show was inspired by an episode of The Twilight Zone from the 1960s. But again, that's for another time. Hope your holidays are filled with joy and a few Christmas carols.